What's up, everybody? Nate Albaugh here, high school football coach in Illinois, long-time high school football coach, and I spent too long not really taking any time to study exercise science and strength conditioning. So you are here on the Power Hour, where we are taking an hour to talk with an expert. And our expert today is William Lund, strength and conditioning coach at Roosevelt University in Chicago, Illinois, also coaching D-line special teams. Welcome, Coach Lund, to the Power Hour.
Great to be here, Nate. Thank you. Expert might be a loosely used term, but a lot of times we got to wear a lot of hats as coaches, and I took it as a point of pride to study and learn, get certifications, talk to people so I can make sure it's just not like, hey, lift weights. It's like, let's have a plan. Just like anything with offense, defense, special teams, strength conditioning, learn it, plan it, put it together, and execute.
Well, amen to that. You know, and the term expert, I want to just kind of take a tangent off that. Expert can really be relative. Every school I've been at, I have been the strength and conditioning expert, but I have no certifications. I've done next to no research, and now here I am. This is week 8, Coach. You are our 8th guest. My goal is 12, and you are the 8th strength and conditioning coach that I have heard from and that has presented. And now I can't tell you how much better and how much more well-versed I feel, even just forcing myself to ask simple questions, some things that I've probably taken for granted for too long. How long have you done strength conditioning, or how long have you been certified?
So I've only been certified technically since 2013, but I've been doing it since I started coaching back in 1999. And even then, I don't know if the certifications were as widely regarded or not regarded, but used or needed or thought of. And at the point, I was like, well, I know enough and I've studied enough, but then I thought, you know what, I want to be regarded in terms of having the certifications, having, that background, just like having a degree. And so it got to the point where schools are willing to pay for it, because it is pricey to get those. And I'm like, if you're going to pay for it, I will do it. And so I've got to roll with it. And really this last couple of years, I've really kind of delved hard into it. And then certainly this past year, coach was very just open. Our head coach, Coach Williamson, was very open about, hey, this is what I want, just make it happen. And so just ran with it. And it really was, perfect storm of just things coming together, having some, I had two really good GAs in our system. Coach Davis, who is a kid from Denison, Ohio, very bright kid, just a very great mind when it comes to, exercise science, strength conditioning. And then our other graduate assistant, Mike Berry, who's an alum, but he also did an internship at Northwestern with actually another alum who's the strength coach over there, Alex Spanos, the guy that, likes to have the cutoff and does all the crazy stuff, who's just all energy, all juice. And I love him. And he's just been a great resource as well. So having guys that, some young guys that actually have some great background and I can bounce ideas off of is huge. What'd you guys think of this? Oh, I liked it. You know what? We might be able to be better off doing this. And even trying to plan what we're trying to do now in 2020 with COVID and all this stuff to make sure we're getting some movement and we're not getting stagnant in terms of kids standing around and, and making sure we're distanced, but also just making sure we're getting the quality work we need. We were able to bounce a lot of, there was probably like 10 different plans that we had going, subtle changes every time going through talking about it. And even up in the last couple of days, once we kind of saw our layout, how it was going to be, like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then we started talking about it. He goes, Coach, what do you think about that? That's a great idea. I didn't even think of that. And it has really worked out these last few days once we got our kids back into lifting here with the guys here in 2020.
Well, if you guys aren't familiar with Coach Lund, he has been coaching for some time now, has spent some time coaching with USA Football, has coached at several different schools. If you could, awesome, the national team. Give us kind of that 30-second version of your trek through coaching and landing at Roosevelt.
Well, I guess it was delusions of grandeur initially. After I got done playing small college ball at Lawrence University, Wisconsin, played some semi-pro ball out in New Hampshire. And after the season, there was a D2 school started up a college football program that was looking for coaches that were willing to coach for $1,500 for the year. Raised my hand, and that got me going. And it's been great because I got to travel around different places in the country, D3, D2, D1, and AIA, and it's always been a learning experience, great experience, and just a lot of awesome people to be around and learn from.
Well, now you've landed at Roosevelt, which is in the city. And how are you enjoying Chicagoland? You enjoying that?
I've enjoyed it. My wife's from Chicago, so of course, it works out that she's got her job, and
Yes.
unless the University of Michigan wants to hire me, I'm probably not going to out earn her. But I'm in a great spot, in a unique situation here with what was Robert Morris and is now Roosevelt University since we merged as schools. But being down in downtown Chicago is unique. Having a vertical campus is very unique because of the views and where our location is, and certainly the opportunity for our kids to experience things. And then also we have our football facility that's in Arlington Heights in the suburbs, which some people will think is maybe a detriment, but I look at it as an advantage because we have built-in downtime for our kids. 45 minutes on a bus, they can take a nap, get on the phone, watch film, maybe do some studying, call mom, call their girlfriend, and then on the way back, same thing. And just to be able to unwind and then get ready for the game, practice, and then, deload from practice a little bit, and unwind, and then get ready to go back and either study, eat, whatever it is they got to do. And the unique thing is that I worked at Columbia University in New York in the Ivy League. We had the same situation. We had to bus to our facility from Manhattan up to, it was still Manhattan, but we're, right on the river next to the Bronx. So, it was a 45-minute bus ride, sometimes an hour because of traffic. So, again, it was just a unique situation that I had been a part of and really didn't, see any issues with it. For me, it's nice because I only live 3 miles from our football facility. But we do make it downtown from time to time for our recruiting stuff. And then in the off season, we'll do our strength conditioning stuff downtown.
Yeah, that is a unique situation. Very cool. Well, you guys check it out, Roosevelt University in Chicago. And Coach Lund today is going to talk about his in-season, out-of-season strength programs. I'm excited to hear from it. Coach, without further ado, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to let you turn it over and talk power.
What's up, coaches? It's Coach Blair. I've been shooting clinics for Chief Pigskin since January. Met some great coaches, learned a lot of stuff. I thank you guys so much for our community, and I hope it keeps growing. And thanks for tuning in to Chief Pigskin TV.
All right, we're back, and it really is. I kind of forgot. I haven't said this for a couple weeks, but my little tagline, another fine day and an hour to talk power. And today we got an hour to talk power with William Lund out of Roosevelt University in Chicago, the strength coach there, also D-line coach and special teams coach. Today, Coach Lund is talking about his in-season, out-of-season program. So without further ado, Coach, take it away, share your screen. It's all you.
All right, so I'll share my screen here. How's that look on the screen here?
Looks good.
Awesome. So, one of our young guys put together this nice little pic with the green waves because we're the Lakers. So it's like, all right, it's kind of cool. So I kind of roll with it. Well, so our strength and conditioning program, I got there last year in July. Our head coach basically said, look, we want to be able to get stronger through the course of the season. And I know when I was a player and a young coach, a lot of times, a lot of coaches that were doing the strength program would always talk about maintaining your strength throughout the season. And, in the last few years, and a lot of the strength coaches that have been able to be around always talked about getting stronger over the course of the season. And I think it was in 2016, I was around a great strength coach that's at Saginaw Valley State University, Chris Winter. And he talked about that hard, and he had some, great, evidence in terms of how teams would get stronger and improve their play throughout the year. And, A lot of it came down to planning because you still had to manage the load of practice as well as, the load of lifting and conditioning and all those things. And so just being around him, learning from him, and talking with him, it just got my mind thinking about things you could do with small college programs. Because for us, D2, D3, NAIA, we're a development program. And so we have to develop our kids throughout the year. And we only have so much time with our guys because in the summer, our kids go home. We don't have the luxury of having kids up in the summer, work with and train like a lot of big-time schools do. So, we have to do a lot of work during the season when we have them, in the off season, and then hopefully enough of that training carries over, because it's not that their kids don't train, it's that we have so many kids that work a ton. They work 2 jobs, not just to support their school, but even support their families. So we deal with a lot of different things that our kids have to deal with that maybe other students don't deal with, that makes it tough for strength conditioning. So just some highlights. So when we got in 2019, we kind of had to go through what days of the week we wanted to practice, how we wanted to, prepare for the game so we're peaking, and then, how we wanted to plan everything out throughout the course of the year. We went 2 days a week during in-season. So we had 2 heavy days, and then we had isometric, eccentric body weight days that had a lot of mobility emphasis. So we had 3 workouts during the year. Our non-travel guys or redshirt guys, they would have actually 4 lifts. They would have 4 heavy lifts throughout the school year. So a lot of them were able to get, vastly stronger. But our core roster, we had the 3, and we would always have a Tuesday or a Thursday day off, and then a Friday, prep day where we were going full speed with our pads, but we did a lot of our mobility, isometric, and eccentric work on the field with our guys, bands, things like that, to be able to get enough of a workout in for our guys and get them ready, for that upcoming game. As we went through our 11-week season, we had 80% of our roster PR during week 11 of the season. Now, when I'm talking about those PRs, that's the travel roster. Those are the guys that played. We had an offensive lineman that played virtually every snap of the season, and he PR'd from when he arrived at camp to week 11. And so, seeing that in action and seeing that plan kind of come to fruition was like, hey, we're on to something here. And then any guys that were unable to test, were included in those numbers. If you factor those guys out, 93% of those guys got stronger. And our core lifts, when we went through from preseason till week 11, was a push press. So, quick dip and then up to a strict front squat, back squat, and then bench. We only did our clean stuff in terms of prep, skill development, technique development with our clean work until we got into our out-of-season stuff. And when we retested late in February, early March, that's where we actually did any clean maxes, because I came in with the assumption of our guys knew nothing and we were going to teach them from the ground up. So for our 2019-2020 season, off-season, we were 4 days a week now. So we increased our load. And then when we had our retest, and these are starting with their numbers at the end of the season, 95% of that returning roster, PR. So we kind of stayed on that same template, but now we had the extra days, the extra time to develop, and then we added one more test in terms of working a full clean with our guys. And that was, a process of August, September, October, November, a little part of December, January, February, and then that first week in March is where we started actually doing some heavy cleans. And so we progressed throughout the process. And unless guys could handle the technique, handle the front rack position in terms of the front squat, we weren't going to let them do anything over certain weights, because we wanted to make sure that they were on point with their technique and their posture and how they handled the weight. So basically the nuts and bolts of things. We gain, not maintain. That was our mentality going in. And so our layout was Our first block when we had our workout was where we taught our Olympic stuff. So a lot of that was bar-based movements early on. And then because of the size of the groups and the size of our weight room, we'd have a group that would do an early block of doing their clean movements, clean technique, and then the other group would be doing some sort of core movement. A lot of times it involved farmer's walks of variations of some type and some sort of moving plank, something, it wasn't sit-ups, but we might even do some wall balls, rotational things with bed balls, things like that, and then we flip groups. A lot of our stuff, in terms of the technique work, tall hangs, 3-position cleans, clean pulls. So all different aspects of the clean that we would develop, and then we'd start putting those pieces of the puzzle together throughout the year. The core in the beginning, too, was something where it was more of a mentality thing to emphasize the importance of our core strength. So it wasn't an afterthought because at so many places, we do the core at the end. And it was just kind of like, and the kids, you could see how they treated it. Like, all right, I'm almost done. This is the last thing and I'm done. So it became something that we wanted to emphasize the importance of it because without the core, whatever strength you have up here, whatever strength you have down here, they never interconnect. And so trying to get our kids to understand that importance. So we wanted to make sure we planned things from day one, and that included what our bye weeks were. That included any postseason weeks, and then we also had our first few weeks of camp. So when our kids came in, everything was bar, body weight, goblets, push-ups, and just to assess where our guys were. I didn't know any of these kids until I got here, and so it was good for me because I could use that to my advantage. All right, let's see what they can do. We started seeing issues in terms of their posture and positioning on a push-up and, maybe some lack of core strength. Or you start seeing, some ankle mobility issues in the squat. So we can actually start thinking, all right, what are some things we can do to help these guys develop over the course of the year? But once we got in the fall camp, those first 2 weeks was all like general physical preparedness stuff. So, again, a lot of body weights, push-ups, barbell, just assessing your squat movements. We assume they know nothing. When we had to do load, we'd use goblet squats. And then with the goblets, we used a lot of, isometric and eccentric work. So pauses, slow tempos down. So, we didn't have an array of kettlebells. We used a lot of dumbbells, but sometimes there wasn't enough dumbbells to go around. So we'd have to use plates as they help. So we just made do with what we had, but using tempo, pauses, things like that really generated a lot of work for our guys. And it was interesting because, doing a 3 sets of 5 for 5 seconds of a tempo push-up crushed a lot of souls early on. And it was kind of fun because you could be that simple and get a lot of good quality work in. So then after we got through our GPP, what we call it was just our neural load. So basic, hypertrophy type work. We work anywhere from 70 to 75%. Early on in camp, we would manage the reps in terms of we just give them ranges. Hey, if you're this guy, you're going to have this range. If you're this, you're going to have this range. And so we could kind of control that as we made sure their technique and everything was solid and sound. But a lot of it was 4 sets, and they were from 8 to 10 reps. Once we got maxes, and we would get that usually around week 6, so right around the first week of the season for us, then we could start adding those numbers in and giving them solid numbers and giving them on their sheets. A lot of that was, again, I wasn't going to ask them what their maxes were and then have them tell me and then have them not be able to do it and then have to rework things. I would basically observe using our staff. What do we see? Do we think he can handle more? Okay. And we would just be very proactive with our guys. And it's just how we had to do it to really kind of learn our guys a little bit, but also to teach them the right ways to do things. So our programming basically was 2 blocks after our explosion block. So we'd have A block, B block. A block, we'd have our main compound movement. So let's say like front squat. And then we'd always do some sort of post-activation potentiation type stuff or a complex of some sort. And for us early on, it would be a snap down or a depth drop or something to teach them how to land properly in terms of jumping. Now, the traditional complexes would say you want to have some sort of moderate or heavy weight. We get that. But considering what we had, what we needed to teach, we were starting from the ground up. So we just added that in there in terms of getting in their head. This is the process. So part of that was just, necessity. And part of that too is get our guys moving a little bit, because it's how we had to split up our weight room because of the location and how it was constructed. And then we'd have a unilateral movement of some sort in there, whether it's for balance or some sort of a muscular balance or just general balance overall, and then just general strength work in there. And then we'd repeat that same complex using something else. So we squat, and then maybe deadlift, and then we'd have some sort of, depth drop, and then maybe some sort of single leg depth drop. And then we'd have a, single leg curls, and then lunges, something like that would be, within the 2 blocks. So that same pattern now repeats itself, and then now we started working an undulating type process where now we're going to work our reps, start lowering the reps, increasing the maxes a little bit, working that same process. And again, the first couple of weeks, we were giving them ranges. And then once we got into the next phase, so we got through our base strength phase, next phase was an intensification phase, we started getting their maxes off their 3+. So when they started going through, we started increasing the weight. We gauge, if they, going for their 3+ max, and he starts repping it out, and 3 is looking easy, rack it, add 5 to 10 more pounds, and then rep it out. We didn't want him to get any more than 7 reps, because then mathematically the numbers just get skewed. And then that's where we started working those maxes, and then started adding that in, so then we can start giving them solid numbers to work off of. And then they got into the habit of how the process worked. Hey, this is how we move. And the next thing you know, we had a tempo in the weight room. A tempo in terms of it became a cardio type workout because of the way we were moving. We were always constantly going from here, getting it done. We had a lot of guys, short time frame. And once the guys got the rhythm, it worked out great. So again, the programming blocks were the same. Now we really start working those plyo complexes in there. Maybe we started adding some weighted jumps, single leg movement, single arm movement, so we can work any muscular imbalances with our guys. So if we started seeing, we had a guy maybe with the low back or hip issue we wanted to work, weak glutes, things like that, trying to notice the different things that we were trying to work through, because, sometimes our trainers got overwhelmed with, the amount of players they had to see. I mean, we're talking 120 plus players that they had to see. They were great in terms of, hey, this guy's got this issue. Hey, what if I did this, this, and this as far as exercise goes? That's great. So having that rapport with our trainers was great, because I trusted them to let me know what was the issue. They trusted me in terms of executing stuff to help them get stronger, to work through some things. And then our peak phase was where we started working through high-level numbers in terms of your percentages, where we work 2+. So how it worked out was we'd go our neural load for like 2 weeks, base, intensification. And then we flip back, neural load, base, peak. And that's how we worked it through the season. We planned it out to where our peak week happened right before bye week. So we can go, really heavy. And then we had that bye week, the rest came out that bye week, guns a-blazing. We were refreshed, ready. We had better maxes. Our kids were moving in the weight room. And it made for, just the way the timing worked out. It just worked out well for us in terms of planning process. But that was the protocol we went through for the most part as we kind of developed our program. And that carried into the off season, where now we had a little bit more time. We actually had 4 days a week with all of our guys. And then now we can add in the level of cleans and clean work with weight. Now we can start working with percentages and load and really start getting guys popping. And that became a lot of fun when we started to add in that stuff. Basically, this was kind of the map of how it worked for 2019. We had our 2 weeks for our general physical preparedness, the neuro load, the base intensification, and then we repeated that and we went to a peak. And that's kind of how it worked. When we had more time in the off season, we basically added 2 weeks of neuro load, 2 weeks of base strength before an intensification, and then 2 weeks of neuro load, 2 weeks of base before a peak. And then that's where we ended up right before March, where we had, our 95% of our returning roster was hitting PRs, and I just was looking up our numbers. We had 95% of our kids increase their squat max by an average of 21 pounds. And so, just having that kind of work that goes through, and that was in a 10-week period, was pretty good. Sometimes too, you had some young kids. I mean, what they were doing previously, it was more of this, 3 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, lift, bench, squat, do some jumps. It was very linear and compartmentalized in terms of how things were done, where, like football is a game that's played and there's a lot of things going on. And so we kind of thought that way in terms of planning our weight room program. And there's different things going on. There's different loads that occur. There's different stresses that occur, and trying to get our kids to understand the different things that do occur on the football field from a strength conditioning standpoint. So for 2020, that was our map. Some of the things, I like the undulating format. I love the PAP work, which we want to include in terms of some of our heavier volume days where we'll maybe go, 2-3 reps in terms of 80, 85, 90%. And then we'll go, basically a strip set, and we'll go, 70%, rip it out 8 to 10 times. And that'll be like in our hypertrophy phase. So we'll start intermixing some things. I've done some different readings from different guys, and it's, really opened my mind to a lot of different things in terms of helping our guys get better. When it comes to our running breakdown, we broke our running down here in the off season, where we worked on, max velocity, change of direction. We did volume runs just to build up our guys. And the way we structured our volume runs were we try to make it like play series. We went out and did some research in terms of the average number of plays and the time it took. And so we figured we could go 40 times with our guys based on their times. So average plays anywhere from 5 to 7 seconds. And we used a play clock. In college was 40 seconds. That was the rest. So we'd have blocks of 4 sets of 5 sprints, 2 minutes break in between, and treat it like 4 series. Like right now with our guys starting this weekend, we just did 2 series because we weren't sure what we were going to get after such a long break. But I asked the kids, I'm like, hey, how long's a play clock? And one kid's like, it's 40 seconds. I go, how long's a rest? 40 seconds. And he started looking around like, oh, hey. And so for him to understand that, hey, there was the method to the madness was pretty cool. We'll do some force runs. So we'll do some band resisted runs, sled runs. Again, a lot of that PAP work. So then when we take that off, now you're running a little bit faster on your starts, things like that. So that's how we've structured our runs in terms of trying to develop our guys here in the next 4 weeks before we get into really heavy football play. So that's kind of our little synopsis of let me just stop the share here. A synopsis of what we've done here this last year and a half to help our guys develop. And it's worked for us. And a lot of it too is you got to just take a look at what you have to work with in terms of equipment, and then what you have to work with in terms of players, and assess what can these guys do, what can we make them better at. And sometimes too, I think as coaches we get caught up in looking at a kid and seeing what he can't do. And I've tried to do a better job of looking at a kid and seeing what he can do and what we can help them get better at. And if that thing he can't do is something we can improve, well, that's what we have to do in the weight room, is to try to improve that. And so that's really kind of been that mindset, especially this last year with a lot of our guys. And that's what made March and COVID and everything so disappointing, because we were so excited going in after the work our kids put in. And so the cool thing is that a lot of kids came back, and a majority of them did a lot of good work in the summer on their own. We used the Team Builder app. so we could put the workouts at least, out there, and they could use their phone, and have video examples, and they could ask questions, and we could post stuff so we could communicate with our guys. And we've done some weigh-ins, and we had an offensive lineman who left at, he was 330 pounds, and he was large, and he came back, and we saw him when he moved in. You could see the broad shoulders, and he weighed in. Even though he looked bigger, he was down 10 pounds. So you could see he put in a lot of quality work, and he's a kid that, he took advantage of the opportunity because he's going to get a chance to play. And so that's what you want to see. But I'm always of the notion of, let's try to see what else we can do in terms of improving it, as long as it fits with our overall plan, because really the movements, the work, the lifting stuff, we do a lot of simple things, in terms of trying to develop, and we build off of that. We try to get progressions within that. And the cool thing is that because of the timing and COVID, all this stuff, we've had to go back to a lot of basic stuff. And it's you can see some kids where they made some improvements, but then also it helps us reassess this is stuff he still has to work on. So I think that's probably the biggest thing over the last few years, is that simple is always better, especially when it comes to strength conditioning.
Well, Coach, great job, man. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I've got a list of questions here, and we'll do a little bit of Q&A.
Hey, my name is Wade Devries, head football coach at Roxana High School down near St. Louis in Illinois. The Chief Pigskin Online Clinic has been huge for us this year. The amount of content that's available on there is exceptional. And having been a speaker on it, the number of contacts that I've been able to make with coaches from around the country has been unbelievable. I couldn't recommend it more.
Welcome back to the Power Hour. We just heard from William Lund about their in and out of season program at Roosevelt University. Coach, a ton of great stuff in there. I've been a high school football coach for the last 20 years. That's kind of where my brain always goes first. Not kind of, it's completely where my brain always goes first. And you talked about 80% of your kids hitting a PR during week 11 of in season, which as a whole high school coach, I feel like is so huge, because you have a lot of kids that don't necessarily have an off season at all. So I just want to kind of generically ask this question, and I understand that you can't give an exact answer. But let's say you were given a group of 10 athletes that had no off season, right? They're football to wrestling, wrestling to baseball, and let's say they went baseball in the spring and baseball in the summer, and then they're right. It's just constant. How does that affect how you're going to train a kid when there is no off season? It's just he's a full-time athlete, and the goal is to get stronger.
I think with a lot of cases with those kids, they're very active kids. Food is fuel, so making sure they're getting the nourishment they need, sleep, getting the rest. I think even as I age, and I've read some different articles about, the deloads and things like that, which are good to help, kids kind of recover a little bit. But I think a lot of it comes back to really it's sleep and food. So with that being said, these kids are always on course and always doing something. And for me, a lot of the mentality came from, my experience being around Coach Winter at Saginaw Valley State, but that also he led me to a bunch of different articles, and then other guys too, of a bunch of different articles about strength training with rugby athletes in Australia and New Zealand. And because of their seasons, they have multiple seasons, but then they also have like national competitions, world competitions. And so the bulk of their training actually is in season. So they don't have that off season per se to train. And so reading what they're doing, and a lot of it's controlling volume, in terms of, hey, this is what we're going to do to, work these core lifts to get stronger, because you've got these competitions, working around the competitions and practice and understanding the volume of work that they're putting into these different things, and having a plan. And if you have a good plan going through, and part of that is because you're working with multiple sports, you might get a coach that doesn't have that idea or mentality or belief that he can lift and be successful for that sport. So, if I was coaching all those sports and I was in charge of those kids, certainly I think you could plan it out and do that. But again, I think it's where, if you're at a big school, sometimes you might have a guy that's in charge of strength conditioning for maybe all the sports, and they'll trust what he says. Hey, you can do this and get stronger. And I think that's something that schools could look into, because I think you do kids a disservice when you say they can't train because of this or that season, or, lifting is bad for baseball players because it'll do this or that, and some of these different things that scientifically make no sense at all. So, again, it comes back to, planning it out, knowing their seasons, understanding their volume. I mean, we did stuff, but, we didn't do as much. We just made sure we got the stuff we needed to get in with our guys. They had enough rest, and they were still able to perform. And when you understand those different factors, absolutely, I think you can get stronger even with multiple sports. Now, you might not gain the weight per se, hey, it'll be great to gain weight, especially with wrestling or with basketball because of all the running. But certainly you can get stronger.
As you looked at and you laid out your plan, you would go from GPP, you called it, to, a neuro load and so on and so forth. Is it one into the next, or is there, let's say the off season in particular, from, let's say, Thanksgiving to the following summer, is there anywhere in there where there are breaks built in, or should this be pretty consistent?
So the breaks are built in kind of certainly throughout the school year. So we planned it out to where, when we had Thanksgiving break, they were going to have a break. It's a week. And I could put a workout there, and then when they come back and I don't see anything on their team builder app, I'm getting mad at them. Or I can plan it out. It's that's a break. All right. And even now, the way it works out with 2020 and our season essentially starting, our first game is scheduled to start mid-February, which means we'll be starting practice mid-January. So we're probably getting in, our kids are going to be on break, and there'll be about 3 weeks off before we report back to campus. So, having there where if we have 2 weeks off, we're okay. If we plan it out, I know I'm going to have these 2 weeks, as long as I can get them doing something, maybe that week prior to kind of get back into a habit. And certainly we'll have that in there, but being able to plan and understanding these are our guys, this is how they are. Now, if that break was longer, if it was a month break, certainly we'll probably plan something out, but a 2-week break, I'm not usually worried about. If we can plan it in there, that's part of it. And, a lot of it is just be active, just be doing something. If you're going to go, work out with your girlfriend or go for a run or go play basketball with your friends, something, just be active and don't be sedentary and not do anything. But a lot of times you could play, if when your breaks are, you just plan around those things and understand that that's just part of it. And rather than force a square peg in a round hole and, get mad, you're just all right, we're going to work through this. And the kids that you trust and believe and they're going to do the stuff they need to do, they're going to find ways to work out more often than not. Hey, coach, I'm going to have Planet Fitness to go to. Okay, hey, you can do all these things, but you won't be able to do this. So, you can adjust it by doing that, and just kind of work through it that way.
And this question too it's really a basic question, but I'm determined to make sure that I increase my understanding of exercise science as a whole. When I look at it, can you help me understand scientifically, or just the science behind, as I look at strength programs throughout a year, it goes through these phases, right? And it's, like you said, that general preparedness, and then it's going to be your hypertrophy phase, and then you're working to something where it's lower sets and heavier weights. What is the science behind that changing it? Help me understand that.
A lot of it the thing about muscle response. So if you think about bodybuilders, and they're constantly just rep after rep after rep after, they're just going. And so it's just those constantly long rep, and that's that's not hypertrophy. You're trying to build your muscle, so you're trying to get your body to elicit response to basically create more muscle fibers. The neural load basically is the body's response neurologically to enact to be able to get stronger. So a lot of times guys will get stronger without necessarily putting on muscle. That's just the neurological response. And then that hypertrophy is now you want to put on and increase your your mass in your body. But now you don't want to increase it too much, because now there's that power phase that we're going to get into where you want to be able to be fast and explosive. So yes, I want to put on weight, but I don't want to, it's like I want to put a big Hemi engine in this car, but I don't want to weigh it down with all these other things that it's going to slow it down. I still want to be fast. So that's where, that hypertrophy is. We want to build some muscle, and then we want to be able to manipulate it a little bit, to be able to generate power, force, speed, explosiveness. And that's where too is handling, a lot of the jump and other work that is incorporated into that power part of things, is to get the ligaments and things to understand the different forces that you have. Like when you're cutting and moving and you got to brace against alignment, different forces on your joints and things, are massive. And so trying to create your body's ability to be able to respond and recover from those is huge too. And sometimes just doing something as simple as a 2.5 pound, isometric hold, and just to work those little ligaments in there to get those stronger. You're not necessarily making them bigger, you're just trying to make them stronger. But for the most part, you're just trying to create a greater cross section to generate more power. But now when you get to bodybuilding, that's when it gets to, they're just getting so big, it's law of diminishing returns. They're just not going to have the movement to generate the power. So, we're trying to develop it. Athletes, they're just trying to develop muscle. So for them, it's just keep lifting, and the body just keeps responding by getting bigger. We want to get bigger, then we want to make sure we manipulate that to make it powerful, fast, and then, kind of repeat the process. Because, football is a grind a little bit, and, you're going to get worn down, and you're going to have some time for your body to recover, and there is a little bit of a process of having to, rest before you get back up again. And so one of the big things is getting stronger, is that we have a greater starting point when we get into the off season to be able to keep working through some things. And so, for us, it's, we're not going to try to build so much muscle on guys, just enough to be able to get a little bit more powerful, quicker, stronger, in some cases, maybe lighter weight, trim the baby fat so you can move a little bit better.
A short little side question here. What's the longest you'll stay in a hypertrophy phase with your squad?
Really, it's probably going to be 2 weeks, and then kind of get it. But I'm a big fan of having little aspects of it. So let's say we get into, a big power phase. A lot of our auxiliary work will most likely be some sort of hypertrophy work. We're doing tricep push downs, it might be 3 sets of 15. So you're working some high reps. So some of those auxiliary exercises will still be a little bit of a hypertrophy type action while you're still working. So you don't necessarily have to be in a hypertrophy phase, and you can only be in this phase. You can intermix a lot of those things together. And so one of the focus might be hypertrophy here, but even though the focus might be power or absolute strength, you can still have little aspects of hypertrophy based on your auxiliaries and other things.
Coach, I think I'll kind of phase into my last little question here, although I know how I am. I'll probably have a little quick side question after that. But you talked about I feel silly that I'm really just learning these things, but I am. Isometric and eccentric type holds or exercises. Can you help me understand the benefits of those and in which phase they fit in best?
So isometric holds are basically just, pauses, like at the bottom of the leg. So we'll do pauses at the bottom of the squat and in that low position. One, to get our kids comfortable with feeling this is your depth of your squat. And then getting them a little more comfortable being down there, but also helping them in that mobility. And then that's that stick point, that you got to drive, you're dead stopped. Now you got to generate power to drive out of there. So there's some different aspects where, it's a pause, might be a quick pause, you drive up. It might be a longer pause to help your ligaments and your joints be able to, withstand the forces in the hole. And part of that too is then getting your body to respond to, power out of things. Eccentrics, basically it's just tempo movements. So like if we're doing a push-up, And it's like 1,001, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you're up. So everything's slow, like eccentric RDLs, your Romanian deadlifts, great for the hamstrings. But that's where there's a lot of damage that goes on in terms of the muscle building, the hypertrophy building, with that, because of you're slowly stretching those hamstrings away. So it's great to be able to build that muscle fiber in that kind of movement, but maybe not great to do it late, before you're trying to peak or playing in a game, because, it does stress the hamstrings a lot. So those are great things, and different things you can do as far as, that hypertrophy phase to change things up. So it's not like 10, 12 reps. It's like you can do 6 reps, but then you're just timing it out, or you're holding it, and just putting your body in positions to develop strength, holding things and strengthening your shoulders, hips, things like that. And they're just nice change of paces, but they're also good teaching tools. Like we'll do it with our goblet squats early on. I always say to groove your pattern, to groove your pattern of your squat, to get guys to be able to move better and to get them to feel how it should be felt. And then, when they start understanding, like, this is where my body position is supposed to be, and I put them under a bar, they have a better understanding of, all right, I feel this. And proprioceptively, they're like, oh, hey, it's not like that. I need to do this. And so they start learning a little bit. But they're great tools to add in there. To challenge. And sometimes too, like, we just didn't have enough weight, barbells, things to go around. If I got guys like maybe doing push press one day, I don't have enough benches and barbells for guys to do a bench, or I needed something. So we started doing tempo push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And it just worked out because it gave me a way to do something in a large group. And it was more necessity than anything. And it was a great challenge because we did 3 sets of 5 the first time at 5 seconds. And that second set, you could see a lot of guys, a lot of the weaknesses in their core were funny. Their bodies were bending and shoulders were undulating. It was kind of comical, but you can start challenging and humbling a lot of kids who thought they were strong.
Yeah. When you're like 5 and you're struggling, it does humble you a little bit. Coach, really enjoyed that, man. So just to make sure I understand that. So for the most part, kind of overall speaking, the isometric, eccentric type tempo stuff, that's going to fit more in like your GPP and your neuro load phase?
For the most part, yes. Though you can, again, like there's times where, in maybe certain warm-ups, we'll just pause, just to throw that in there more as a reminder, maybe with lighter weight. Sometimes too, it was a heavy squat day, we might actually throw in a squat movement on an upper body day, and we'll just, use some certain percentage, of maybe a front squat movement if we did back squat the day before, and then just do a little pause, just work up 2 or 3 rep max, pause, just to, work some of that soreness out of the legs and stuff like that. So it's something there. It doesn't have to be used there. Again, it's maybe more the focus there, but you can sprinkle that in.
Yeah.
For different phases.
I like using that as the teachability part of it. I like that a lot, like you said. Well, Coach, really appreciate your time. Learned a ton from this, and appreciate, again, this dive into it has been so good for me. I can't thank you enough. Any closing thoughts before we say goodbye here?
Keep it simple. I mean, more often than not, like, and it's funny because you see this on ESPN all the time. They'll show these elite athletes doing the crazy stuff, and buddy, the trainer, to do this stuff, and then you see these kids or these other wannabe trainers like do all these things, and I believe in a lot of the stuff that they do, but then I'll see a trainer will talk about, well, you don't need to be under a squat rack, and I'm like, well, maybe you don't, but if you really want to develop power, yeah, you absolutely do, because you're not going to develop the kind of power and strength you can, just doing body weight. You're not. Now there might be certain medical things that occur that you can't do certain things, great. But for the most part, I'm a firm believer in the squat, and, to the people that say, well, squatting is bad for your knees, it's like, That technique's bad for your knees.
Yeah, yeah.
Squat as a whole is not. Yeah, I'm actually stronger now in my squat than I ever was in college. Sadly, I'm admitting that. I didn't squat over 400 until I turned 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for you that you're staying in shape. I just started 10-minute workouts like 2 times a week. That's the extent of my lifting right now. Sad to say, but it's better than nothing.
True.
Coach, thanks so much. All of you guys, thank you for joining us on the Power Hour. Look up Coach Lund. He can be found on Twitter I want to say it's at Lund Sanity, but give us the exact.
At Lund Sanity 51.
Okay, at Lund's as in Lund, Sanity as in Lynn Sanity, at Lund Sanity 51. Look him up on Twitter. Give him a follow. And guys, thank you. Of course, like, subscribe, all those things that support the channel. We would really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch you next week here on the Power Hour.